Welcome to Attention Retention, the podcast where we explore the world of recruitment and retention in the trucking and logistics industry. I'm your host, Jackie McManus, CEO of KJ Media, a recruitment advertising agency specializing in this space. Today, I'll be joined by Cliff Jackson, who leads our digital media campaigns for our clients. Make sure to like and subscribe on whatever channel you're listening to so you can stay up to date on all future content.
Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
Today, I'm honored to have Cliff Jackson, a personal friend and colleague who leads our digital media, providing expertise in the trucking industry. Cliff, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jackie.
Of course. You and I have been working together for almost 5 years. We were just talking about that right before we pressed the record button. And I have to say, time has flown. And It has been nothing but a growing learning experience. And I can tell you this, you have made my life and our clients' lives a lot easier, happier, and more efficient. So thank you so much for all that you have done. And I'm excited to have you on this podcast today and really introduce you. The wizard is what I call you to a lot of our prospects and clients. And they're like, who is this mad scientist in the back? And his name is Cliff Jackson. So everyone, this is Cliff Jackson, and really excited to have you on today. So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your expertise in the digital media industry, specifically in the trucking space?
Yeah, so my background is in digital advertising with Meta, Google. That's evolved to all the other platforms that we've tested on. But, that was kind of my background that I brought to KJ. And when I started working with you, I didn't know a single thing about trucking. So, there is a learning curve there. But over the 5 years, obviously, I've learned a lot. And, it's really interesting just how different some little nuances and things are about advertising and trucking and what we do versus what I've done with other companies in B2B and B2C kind of spaces.
Cliff, you bring up a great point, because that's something that I talk about often, is the fact that the advertising to truck drivers and recruiting those drivers is completely different segment than the B2B advertising. Often, I'll talk to clients or prospects and they'll have an in-house marketing team that focuses specifically on that B2B, and they'll try and they may succeed in some capacity. But what we have found, and to be proven to be true because of our intel over the last 5 years with you specifically and 10 years of industry experience, we've been able to successfully outperform because of the little nuances. Wouldn't you agree? And how different that is between the B2B versus recruiting marketing?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And that's kind of like, when I came in and started working with you, I was kind of bringing the same thing that, a lot of those internal marketers that we'd see at some of our clients, that mindset that they bring into it, where it's like, one of the biggest differences is like the creative approach and like the style, in most, pretty much any other marketing and advertising, the like style of your creative and how flashy it is and how branded and your brand cohesion, right. That's really a big deal. And, this target market doesn't care about that as much. And I wouldn't say it's because they're not sophisticated. I would say it's because they care about the meat and potatoes. They care about the details, and like they want things straightforward. So like once we made that realization, that was one of the biggest corners that we turned with like just our success and kind of getting those numbers down, was like, let's make this stuff really simple. Let's make it really clean and to the point. And I think that's kind of good advice for any advertising, honestly. And it's a mistake that companies make in every space, but you get hurt a lot more for it in the trucking industry, I think, where it's like brand is not first, it's the quality and the quality of your message and your content that you really need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest learning lessons, and we have an amazing creative team that obviously gets the itch to put together these vast campaigns that are a little bit more flashy, and when we A/B test, because that's what we do in the back end, we realize that, and quickly, that drivers and other hourly employees, such as warehouse workers and diesel mechanics, they really want that digestible characteristics of a company before applying. They really don't want to see, these, very theatrical type banner ads. They really want to understand, and we're going to dive into more about what's working, what's not working in this industry. But it has been a learning curve, and it's been something that has been proving to be very successful. It's keeping that very digestible for each and every carrier. So I'm going to roll into the next question. In your experience, what are some of the critical factors that companies need to consider to stay competitive in this ever-evolving digital landscape?
Yeah. I mean, one of them kind of relates to what we we're just talking about, but, staying up on trends and understanding your target market, that's kind of marketing 101, but it's a trap that a lot of marketers and advertisers will fall into, is that they kind of say, this worked before, or this is, I have this great idea and we all like it, so this is what we're doing, rather than kind of coming in with an open mind. So, we're always testing, retesting, like you said, A/B testing, like we're ABCD testing and rotating, and like, if Grace or someone on the team wants to put together, a flashy or nice kind of video creative, we're going to test that every time, even if maybe my gut said it's not going to work. Like, we're going to go test that, and maybe we'll put it up against just a simple banner, or a simple word creative, and we just like to see what wins. And sometimes, like, we're surprised, so we're always testing, and that's kind of number one. Another big one is not overcommitting to a single platform. Just like with getting stuck on one idea or a couple ideas, you don't want to really get stuck on one platform. So, trends change, the market changes, like, what works today might not work tomorrow. So you want to be testing, and we saw that, with Facebook, with Google, it'll kind of shift kind of what's working one day and what's not, and also how they work. So like within Facebook, the types of campaigns that we run has changed over time. Within Google, the types of campaigns that we run, 5 years ago, Google was all keywords, some display. Now it's performance max, discovery campaigns. Keywords are kind of secondary to those. And then Facebook's always evolving and changing. We have the special ad audiences that we had to work around a few years ago when those came in. That kind of flipped the cart for us for a few months, and then we got back up to speed. So like things are changing, and when we have other platforms to lean on, it's not like, okay, if this one kind of goes down the toilet today, we're completely done because we're all in here. And that's a lesson that we learned at a few points, because we did get overcommitted to certain platforms. So it's just like being really diversified with every client, so that like no matter who they are or what their budget is, we're ready to shift. And then the other thing is always test, always, no, I already said that one. Yeah, well, so I guess the other thing is like cycling your creative. This goes in with always testing, but like always keeping it fresh as well. Like when you finish one test, you want to be kind of cycling in the next thing, and trying new visual creatives, new text creatives, new landing pages. We're always ABC testing our landing pages. We're swapping headlines. We're just trying different approaches for the biggest and the smallest client. Like we're doing this, and if you're one company and you only have a few types of jobs, you might not have to do it as much. But like for us, where we're advertising for, reefer to owner operator, company drivers, car haulers, every single possible thing, to warehouse workers and mechanics and all these different things, like the copy and creative that's going to speak to those to one of those isn't necessarily going to work for the other. Like one interesting nuance that we found was like using the call to action, learn more, works really well with owner operators, but it doesn't work for company drivers. Company drivers would do better when you say apply now. So it's just those little things that you have to, we would never know that if we weren't testing all these little things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up several great points. And I think, first and foremost, one thing that I've noticed on the overall industry shift, especially during COVID, is where the carriers, their mindset has completely opened up to where and how they're advertising. When I started KJ Media, Cliff, and I was talking about Facebook, people were looking at me like I had 45 heads, right? Now we know how valuable that platform is and how successful companies could be on that. However, sometimes I hear, and I was just recently on a call with a prospect, and they said to me, well, pretty good sized carrier, maybe about 500. We tried Facebook once and it didn't work. And I said, I wish I had Cliff on this call for a little lesson. And the reason is because it's not going to work with a small test. It's not going to work with, some generic language that you're utilizing just from your job description and putting it up there and just hoping for the best. I think one interpretation of digital advertising that often gets overlooked is how often our team internally has to ABCD test to ensure that each carrier gets maximum results. And you and I are totally in alignment when we know not every carrier is the same. Some carriers will outperform on a Google PMax campaign versus a Meta campaign versus a YouTube campaign. What components in your mind are critical when we're onboarding a new client? What's critical as you develop their overall media mix when first working with a new customer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously budget plays into that and how much they can spend. Like, if someone has 50 or 60 or $70,000 budget a month, we can really play in 5-6 platforms and test and expand across all of those. So that's obviously the biggest thing. But back to like what I was talking about with the different specializations and types of jobs, we have that experience obviously from doing this for so many different kinds of companies and different kinds of drivers that we know, hey, maybe Indeed is going to work a little better for mechanics versus Facebook. Maybe doing a Google PMax campaign is going to work a little better for company drivers than it is for owner operators. Those are kind of random examples, but like we know, kind of the nuts and bolts for what works better on specific platforms. And so we'll kind of adjust our budget based on that. But, back to the always testing, like we could be proven wrong. Maybe the geo is a little different. Maybe their target market where they're looking is a little bit different. So we will kind of test a few of those platforms always, no matter what the budget is. But based on our experience, we kind of know what direction to start in. And, usually we're proven right with that mix, but sometimes we're proven wrong and we'll start adjusting based on what we find there. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the biggest things as far as media mix.
And I have to say, I call you, like I mentioned earlier, I call you guys the team of wizards, and that's for a reason. You lead the pack when it comes to digital advertising, have an incredible team that works underneath of you, and outperforming is something that it amazes me. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. Every time I talk to you, our clients either have the same cost per lead if they've been with us for 4 to 5 years, or you've actually proven to have lower cost per leads. What's most impressive recently that we've been finding, especially in the last 6 months, is the ability to lower our clients' overall cost per hire. And I think you and I both were in amazement when we had specific companies that they actually really didn't have the most sophisticated technology set up. right? They didn't have the full ATS with the drip campaigns set up. And some of our clients now are seeing well under $1,000. We have, I'm always scared to say this stat, but some of our clients are seeing a 250 to 300 cost per acquisition. Could you provide a little bit more of an overview of why you think we're able to generate those results versus, that client just posted right directly on Indeed for themselves?
Yeah, I think there's a few key factors that play into that. Number one, we've set up this really robust process for kind of always benchmarking ourselves, and we're always competing with ourselves and competing with last month.
Yep.
And, kind of our whole culture at KJ is like, last month was great. What can we do better this month? Like, how can we come back to the client and show them we did even better this month? And I really love that, because like we're always competing and trying to get that number down, for cost per qualified leads, for cost per hire, for everything across the board. And that goes back to, top of funnel where we're bringing the leads in. So our process is really built around like constant improvement. And the way we do that is, we're getting together every week and we're looking at every single client, big and small, looking at all of their ads. We're looking at, how did they do week over week? How have they done month over month? Kind of looking at the trend lines and all the statistics on specific ads and campaigns and platforms, from the top down. And we're cycling, we're kind of pushing everything old out. We're refreshing everything as we need. This is where the A/B testing comes in. We're always testing new things and kind of saying, okay, this one worked. Now let's try this thing. So we have just a really robust process around like, how can we keep pushing it further? That I think is number one. Number two, like Jillian and her team do a great job of, and you too, of kind of getting with the client and getting their feedback. That's so important to like how we're going to improve, just having that data and having that feedback from them. So, it's a two-way street. It's a constant conversation with the client where we're working with them to make sure they're getting what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Because as like we could send them cheaper and cheaper leads all day, and that looks great on our end. But if we don't know from them exactly how those leads are, exactly, not just their hires, but we want to know how the conversations are going, how the recruiters are talking to them on the phone, like what kind of conversations are they having, what feedback are they getting. That's going to all help us to tweak our campaigns and everything just to make the leads even better for them. And Jillian's always pushing on clients to get that feedback and get that information. And also I think some of the work she's done with some of our clients to really, you mentioned the ATS, like really get in there and tweak and optimize that.
Yep.
So that their ATS is in sync with all of the follow-up that we do. And, speaking of the follow-up we do, we also have our whole process. Once we get a lead in, we're not just sending it to the client, but we have, in some cases, a double opt-in process. So we're really filtering for only the best, highest quality, highest intent leads. So they're filling out not one, but two forms, basically saying, here's all my information. I want this job. I'm interested. Then they're going to fill out another that kind of says, yes, I definitely want to connect with this company. So those are usually the most motivated people. They're ready to go now, fill out an application. They're ready to get on the phone with the recruiter. If they're qualified, they're going to be ready to kind of move forward. So we want to make sure those hottest prospects are the ones that are connecting with the clients. And, we've built a system around that. And Jillian, like I said, has sometimes been able to get into their ATS and make sure that their follow-up is in sync with ours, so that it's all really kind of singing together and working together really nicely.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge piece is the ability when we're able to get that type of partnership and that trust between our clients and then as the media vendor, because we're here to help our clients grow and excel. And there's been a number of clients, they'll come to us directly before they either if they're growing their business through organically or if they're mergers and acquisitions, they trust our team to say, hey, we're bidding on this project. what do we think the media spend's going to be? And when we're fully integrated with their ATS system, it only strengthens that partnership. I'm going to throw in a quick little stat, but we have a 98% customer success rate. The 2% of the clients that have paused their campaigns, it's really because they don't have enough trucks right now, or that we fully fulfilled their obligation of how many drivers they have, or warehouse workers or technicians. And so that alone, I think, tying back to the fact of what you said, is that there's a competitiveness, and maybe it's because you and I were both laps players back in the day. We bring that as leaders to the board, but you and I definitely have, and Jillian as well, have a competitiveness internally. And so what that does is it drives the organization, it drives our business, and then it drives to get our clients better results so that they can be the carrier of choice. Whether the client is a smaller carrier with 50 trucks to some of our clients that have 1,000 drivers, we want to make sure that we are just developing the most effective system so that we increase recruiter productivity. I know on average with the systems that you put together for our clients, recruiter productivity went up by 82%. And I have to say, recruiters love us. And that's a good feeling to have, because we're able to overall help with the goals of the company and make people's lives a little bit easier. And that is why I call you a wizard. And so when you're looking at, what advice would you give to a trucking company if they're looking at a new vendor or a new partnership with a company? What advice would you say, this is what I would look at if I were you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. Number one is, past results. Obviously you want to know recent results and how they're doing. And, you want to know what kind of attention you're going to get. I think a lot of times, you get all the bells and whistles and the white glove service when you're being courted to be brought in as a new client by these agencies. But, 3 to 6 months into that contract, maybe it's a lot harder to get somebody on the phone. And like we just talked about, like that back and forth and that communication is so crucial to the success of a campaign in the long term, that you want to make sure that they're accessible if you're a carrier. And I think too, like as a carrier, you should be coming into that relationship with a really open mind of like, it's not just set it and forget it. Like, yes, we or any of our competitors are going to do all the hard work of like doing all the placements and the creative and just doing everything that we've been talking about. But it is critical if you really want to go to that next level and, improve your hire rates and cut your costs and do all the things that, we know that we can deliver for clients. They have to be open and they have to be willing to change some things too. And our most successful clients, we always see it, is that they're, like you said, we have that partnership and they're willing to kind of listen to our feedback as well as give us feedback. So those have been the most successful relationships, and it's pretty critical for future success for these companies. Is just being open and willing, sharing all the data that they possibly can, being willing to change, giving us access to their ATS, all of those things that maybe feel uncomfortable but are pretty critical for success.
Absolutely. And I have to just share a quick story here with one of our customers who was at capacity. She called me and said, Jackie, we need to pause our campaign, but I feel like this is a breakup. And, for me, where I said, that's probably one of the biggest compliments that I could receive, is the fact that it's such a family dynamic that we build between the KJ and our customers, that there's that feeling of, just missing that dynamic and that personnel and that approach. And that white glove service is something that we have always been sticklers on, is to really provide a premium service so that, when we have our weekly check-ins with clients, a lot of those times those weekly check-ins become recruiter meetings because the organization's so busy doing so many other things. They've used that as an opportunity to talk internally with their media partner on. And I couldn't agree with you more. Really, with that successful partnership, it comes down to both being open-minded and collaborating so that we can get the results. Tell us the good, but also tell us the bad and the ugly, because we want to be able on the back end to make sure that we're optimizing the campaign. So going into 2024, okay, you and I have talked about video. What do you think is going to be the most significant changes that your team's going to be looking at going into 2024 or 2023 and then 2024, and how the digital landscape will be shifting?
Yeah, I think, obviously everyone's talking about AI. AI has been around for a long time, and it's had a huge impact in the last few years on the way that advertising works on these platforms. And, that's obviously only going to increase. But, we've mentioned PMax a few times, but Performance Max is a type of Google campaign that is run entirely by AI. So you kind of plug in your creative and you narrow down your audience a little bit, and you kind of let it run. And the AI is going to kind of target your audience and optimize for your conversions. And you need to give it feedback and kind of pull some levers to tell it what's working and what's not working so that it can keep improving. But it's all AI learning in the way that it works. So, and it's been groundbreaking. They've been trying to kind of get a product like that for years, and this one has been exceptional. So I just see, I don't know what's going to be next, but I'm sure Meta is going to be doing more of this. I'm sure there'll just be lots of different opportunities where that type of AI machine learning is going to be impacting the placements and the way that we advertise, which, just makes it's not easier. It's just different for what we have to do. And it's just a different set of stuff that we need to learn. And I think one of the other big things that we're pushing, and I'm seeing this kind of across advertising more, is these informal style testimonials. They're just really huge, in the B2C world, this UGC, it's called user generated content, where it's, like an influencer or just a regular person kind of talking to their cell phone about hey, I just got this product. It's really great. It makes my hair really shiny. I think, this is kind of something that we're right now pushing with KJ, to get a similar kind of style, maybe a little bit nicer than UGC, but that same idea of pretty informal testimonials of drivers talking about, what they like about the job, what's a day in the life, just really casual conversation about their life at one of our clients. And then using that for advertising is going to be, I think it's going to be huge. And I think I'm already seeing the market move that way in other spaces, but I'm pretty confident we can make a pretty big splash with that in trucking. So I'm excited for, using more of these assets and what they're going to do for our campaigns.
Yeah, and those videos too, they're not the polished, shiny, again, back to where we started this conversation with, right? The flashy, these are all, the power of an iPhone, right? They have some of the best cameras out there, and a matter of a 30-second clip from a driver, and testimonials across the board, even the B2B market, at the B2C, and then in the recruitment market, that, drivers want to hear from other drivers. Why they're working for a company, what's keeping in there. The latest release from the ATRI was that 65% of the younger generation pays secondary. It comes down to company culture. And really that can be explored through these short user-generated videos to highlight the company's benefits and share that on a mass scale versus calling a driver for a referral. And I'm excited to get involved more with more videos and showcasing the case studies so that we can get more companies on board to do that as well, because it's going to be a game changer.
And Yeah, we did both kind of mention like the informal and, maybe rough style. It's
Mhm.
actually key to the success of that type of asset that it's not super polished.
Mhm.
Um, because it makes it feel really real. Like it's more believable when it feels a little bit unpolished. It's kind of in this, and this is really popular right now because of TikTok and because of Instagram and because of stories. That style really kind of meshes with especially the younger generation, like you said. Like they are used to getting their information and their news from TikTok and from Instagram and from Twitter and in this informal way. And that's really how people learn now in a lot of ways. So when it looks super polished, you're swiping by that because that's an ad. But when it looks like a real guy talking about how he's loves working at DM Bowman or loves working at this company, whoever it is, like they're going to stay and watch that because, oh, this is a real guy like me talking about what it's like. And then that's how they get in. You just want them to watch a little bit longer. Um, so that style, it's essential for it to not be over polished. And it's actually a selling point, which I think some bigger companies especially could get hung up on that,
Mhm.
but it's really critical that it's not over polished.
For sure. And I kind of want to pivot on that note specifically, discussing content. You and I have successfully launched Fifth Wheel Hub, and Fifth Wheel Hub is a direct lead platform for transportation companies. On there, it is high intent, highly qualified leads for CDL drivers, owner operators, carriers, warehouse workers, diesel techs. And when we launched in 2020, you and I had to sit down because I'm one of those people. I like things done really quickly, and I think that's where we complement each other because you explain it to me and say slow and steady wins the race. And the number one thing that you focused on was we need to develop really good content to develop our network. And over the last 3 years, we have successfully 3x our following on our newsletter subscriptions, our social media sites, and the amount of people that are actually visiting our website. And I think your team has done a really excellent job at building that trust and that relationship with Fifth Wheel Hub and our network. And then in turn, now we have it as an opportunity board and a job board that we're able to have carriers post on, which is fantastic. And that's where they're really seeing some fantastic results for the smaller carriers or even larger carriers that have an in-house media team or an agency of record already, and they want to leverage a different audience. Through that process, what have you found to be the type of content that has been so most engaging in growing our database?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that stood out as we were kind of developing the high quality content that you talked about was like so much of the articles and news and information that is tailored to trucking and truckers is like kind of, in my opinion, trashy content. It's like, oh, who got arrested for a drug bust, or who got in this horrible accident, or you know,
Negative.
yeah, it's just like very negative and low quality stuff. So one of the big things was I decided pretty early on, like, we're not going to run anything like that ever. Like, we're going to, treat our audience with respect as intelligent adults, which they are, rather than like just feeding them junk. So we're always just trying to focus on adding value and provide useful information about things they might not know. If there's maybe a government, like with the, I can't remember if it was a hurricane or flooding in the Midwest earlier this year, we had stuff about, how you can get involved and help out. If you're going cross country, maybe you can just drop some supplies off there, things like that, which, that got a ton of feedback for people wanting to get involved. We're always trying to look for things like that, where it's like, what are things that are interesting to them, obviously, that they want to read, but like adding a little more value and being more of a resource. We're also really working on building up organic blog content on kind of servicing like the next generation of truck drivers is the idea, and just like building a lot of resources around how to become a truck driver, what's it like to be a truck driver, you know, how do you pick a truck driving school, like all the different decisions that they have to make that can be pretty complicated. Just trying to break that down a little bit more easily for them in one place. So, you know, the vision is like helping more younger drivers become truck drivers and then, you know, helping them find a job ideally.
And to be honest, Cliff, when you brought this to my attention about the how-tos and how to be a CDL truck driver, I was like, Cliff, there's got to be info on this out there. I mean, we can't. And we did a hard look, and you know what? There is a lot of information, but it's scattered. And so I think what we did a really good job at is making it, again, back to that digestible format. So people know exactly they're searching for and what to get, and they're getting what they want out of that website. And I think that's what's been key to the growth too, is that we're making it very digestible for current drivers, but then also the next generation of drivers and giving them the how-tos. And I think that's, I truly believe that that type of information that we've been able to provide has been huge. And, you know, with that, we're able to leverage that network and utilize that when we're advertising, because as we know, over the years, it's becoming more and more challenging to find targeted markets if you don't have your own internal lookalike audiences or sources. You know, Facebook 10 years ago was, you know, it was a playground. You know, back in the day when we could get zip codes. And so, you know, now because of government mandates, it's been a lot more difficult. You have to be a lot more strategic when you're advertising on these platforms. So I appreciate all you do. And thank you so much for being on our Attention Retention podcast. Any last final notes for the audience?
No, always be testing.
Oh, always be testing. And you know what, Cliff? I was a little disappointed because I was hoping Cliff is a father of two. Tess is how old? 4?
She'll be 4 in 6 days.
4 going on 17, and she always happens to make an appearance at our leadership meetings and drops the mic. So on the next time that you're on, I'm going to request that Tess comes on and gives a little demo on how we do what we do. But Cliff, thank you so much for being on, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jackie.